Hello everyone. Welcome to Personality Lab. Your hosts are Coco, me, Caribel, and Chanelee. Today we'll be discussing how personality, love, and sexuality intersect and how it affects our relationships. We also are going to analyze two characters from the recent tennis movie Challengers to emphasize how personality traits affect relationship dynamics. So first up, Chanelee, can you explain what is love?
Yes, of course. Well, actually, there are two theories of love we'll be discussing today. The first theory is from John Lee, created in 1973, and it proposes a six-style model of love with three main styles. One style is called eros, which essentially describes passionate or romantic love. It's the kind of love that's full of attraction and desire. Think of Romeo and Juliet, or the chemistry in the early stages of a relationship. The next one is ludus, which is all about a playful game of love. A person with a ludic style enjoys the thrill of the chase and often avoids deep commitment. It's not necessarily malicious, it's about fun, flirting, and freedom. Me, do you know what the last one's called?
Yes, I do. The final one is storge, which is a friendship-based love. It's characterized by a love that is slow-growing, stable, and rooted in companionship. It's a type of love that often develops between friends who realize one day that they've fallen for each other. Lee believed that these primary styles can mix, forming secondary ones. For instance, a blend of eros and storge might result in a deep romantic love that's both passionate and stable. Now let's move on to the next theory of love.
I could jump in and explain the next theory called the triangular theory of love. It was created by Robert Sternberg in 1986, and he proposed the theory that love is made up of three components: intimacy, which is about emotional closeness and connection; passion, which is physical attraction and desire; and finally commitment, which is the decision to maintain love long term. Depending on how these three combine, we get different kinds of love experiences. For instance, intimacy alone leads to just liking. Passion alone just leads to infatuation, and commitment alone leads to empty love. All three together lead to a consummate love, the ideal form, though Sternberg noted that it's rare and hard to maintain.
Okay, now that we've explained that, let's move on to the topic that we're all waiting for. How are relationships and relationship quality affected by our personality traits? We are going to be focusing on the big five personality traits, which are conscientiousness, openness, neuroticism, extroversion, and agreeableness. The first question we are going to focus on is, are there personality traits linked to love and relationship length?
Oh, I can answer that one. In regards to conscientiousness, people high in this trait are more likely to have intimacy and passion in their relationships, which would increase relationship length. Also, people high in neuroticism experience reduced marital quality, and extroversion is positively correlated with relationship length. Since extroverts are better at communicating love than introverts. Finally, people who are more agreeable tend to be more satisfied in their marriages and have fewer negative partner interactions, like arguing and conflict. Okay, that was a lot, but now we want to analyze how this applies to two of the characters from the movie Challengers. Before we begin, can someone give us a short synopsis of Challengers?
I can. Challengers is a tennis movie driven by the love triangle of three main tennis players named Tashi, Art, and Patrick. The two characters we're focusing on are Art and Tashi, who are married and are experiencing instability in their relationship. Tashi was a star tennis player who got injured and soon became Art's tennis coach, which developed into a relationship and later on marriage. Due to her tennis background, she is dedicated, strict, and stubborn, and those traits bleed into her marriage with Art. While Tashi is very ambitious, Art is much calmer and is essentially dependent on Tashi for his happiness. At the end of the movie, their marriage is falling apart because Art decides he wants to quit tennis. But the foundation of the relationship is tennis, so without that, Tashi decides that if he quits, she will leave him.
Now that we have an understanding of some of their relationship dynamics, let's analyze how their personality traits are influencing the longevity of their relationship. Tashi scores extremely high in conscientiousness and neuroticism, which comes out as intensity, control, and a deep fear of losing the life she built around tennis. Art, meanwhile, has high agreeableness and a gentler form of conscientiousness. He's stable, supportive, and willing to sacrifice his own needs to keep the relationship intact. These traits initially make them feel compatible because Art's softness balances Tashi's ambition, but over time the mismatch becomes harmful. Tashi's need for control clashes with Art's tendency to avoid conflict, creating a dynamic where she pushes and he absorbs.
This imbalance directly affects the relationship longevity. High agreeableness is linked to longer relationships, and we see that in Art's determination to hold everything together, even when he suspects Tashi is unhappy or unfaithful. But Tashi's higher neuroticism and lower agreeableness undermine their long-term stability. Her emotional volatility, anger, and dissatisfaction spill over into their marriage, especially once tennis is no longer the glue holding them together. When Art finally chooses himself and admits he wants to quit tennis, the entire foundation collapses. Their personalities weren't just different, they were pulling the relationship in opposite directions, making it impossible for them to sustain intimacy and mutual satisfaction over time.
Wow, that was very insightful. It's a great example of the effects of personality traits on relationship longevity. Now let's switch gears and focus on how personality traits affect the likelihood of infidelity within a relationship. Starting off with conscientiousness. People with lower conscientiousness have an increased likelihood to participate in infidelity. High neuroticism is most closely related to increased infidelity and is characterized by the lack of positive psychological adjustment, low emotional stability, and low emotional regulation. People high in extroversion have increased chances of cheating on their partner and have lower rates of relationship exclusivity. Finally, low rates of agreeableness are also linked to increased likelihood of infidelity. So, Mee, how does this relate to the characters Art and Tashi, challengers?
It is very correlated because Tashi's behavior fits almost perfectly with the personality profile most associated with infidelity. Her high neuroticism creates the emotional instability that often pushes her towards impulsive decisions, like repeatedly seeking Patrick for escape and validation. She also shows low agreeableness, especially in how she prioritizes ambition and intensity over empathy or emotional responsibility, which lower her commitment to relationship boundaries. On top of that, her moment of lower consciousness, breaking her own moral rules, acting on impulse, and abandoning long-term relationship stability, further explaining why she cycles back to Patrick even after choosing Art.
And to connect everything back to research, there's a well-known study called the Longitudinal Course of Marital Quality and Stability by Kearney and Bradbury, 1995, showing that neuroticism is one of the strongest predictors of relationship distress. People high in neuroticism tend to have more conflict, emotional reactivity, and overall lower relationship satisfaction. This fits Tashi almost perfectly. Her emotional instability doesn't stay internal. It shapes the entire tone of her marriage with Art. Their relationship doesn't crumble because of a lack of love, but because her personality traits make long-term stability incredibly difficult.
Another study that connects really well here is called the 5-Factor Model of Personality and Relationship Satisfaction of Intimate Partners by Malouf. They found that higher agreeableness and higher conscientiousness are constantly linked to better relationship satisfaction and healthier communication. That lines up with Art almost perfectly. His agreeableness, patience, and steady support keep their marriage functioning for far longer than it probably should have. Meanwhile, Tashi's lower agreeableness and her rigid perfectionistic form of conscientiousness don't foster harmony the same way. So their personality combination isn't just dramatic for the story, it reflects actual psychological patterns we see in real relationships.
Meanwhile, Art reflects the opposite side of those findings. His high agreeableness and higher conscientiousness are traits linked to loyalty and long-term commitment, which supports why he stays devoted to Tashi even when the relationship is falling apart.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Personality Lab, where we've explored how love theories, personality traits, and real psychological research all help us understand why relationships succeed, struggle, or fall apart.
And by looking at challengers, we got to see how these concepts play out in a really intense, dramatic relationship dynamic. Understanding that can help us better understand our partners and ourselves.
So thank you all for listening. We hope today's breakdown helped you see relationships through a psychological lens, and maybe even in a way to reflect your own traits a little bit.